Good day, everyone, and welcome from Vancouver. So, my name is Christian Sasser. I'm the one host of the Humans and Wildlife show, and and there we go. We have a first
Where's
problem.
the echo?
I got
Wow.
a sec.
You must have some other tab open, Christian. I'm just going to mute you for a second. Anyways, okay, so as Christian figures out what other thing he has open, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the topic for today, which is misunderstandings in animals. So with a sort of special focus on negative misconceptions that we have about some animals. So this was sparked by a suggestion actually from one of our regular viewers, Amanda Price. And I see we have some of our other regular viewers here. I'm going to unmute Christian real quick. Christian,
I found it. I found it.
Perfect. Okay, and I'm going to keep doing, I think we're going to stick with this thing where I'm just going to show people's comments on the screen, and then we don't see, it helps us use the full screen, which I like. So hi, Frankman, and Amanda Price herself is here, the suggester of the topic. Yeah, we really appreciate you guys sending us interesting articles and things like that.
Yes. So very, very quickly, we apologize for all the inconvenience of the technical issues, but
Yeah.
Georgia and I had a lot of problems. I'm back in Vancouver. I arrived yesterday, and I've been trying to get it in my studio, and it just wouldn't work. And then I got a laptop, and apologies for the for the feedback, but we finally got it sorted out, so we'll make the best of it now.
Yeah, we got it sorted out, and good enough for David Dunn to give us a super sticker award from YouTube. So thank you for that, David.
Thank you.
And hello to everyone else who is joining us. So yeah, real quick, I want to actually I'll do a screen share of the article that sparked our topic for today. And we do a window. And let me max. Oh yeah, it's big. So this is the article that Amanda sent to me that sparked this, and it's in the Texas Monthly, and it's Texas, Meet Your Adorable Bloodthirsty New Neighbors. And the sub caption is, given the choice between an influx of vampire bats and an influx of tech bros in Patagonia vests, ... And the implication is that perhaps the Texans prefer the vampire bats to the Patagonia wearing bros, which makes me both sad and happy, I guess, because I love vampire bats and I love Patagonia. Texans, I think you should like both of them. But yeah, basically what's happening is that vampire bats are found in sort of tropical and subtropical areas of the New World. So in South and Latin America up into Mexico. And with climate change, the vampire bats are basically getting closer and closer to the United States, to Texas specifically, which is our southernmost continental state. And this is a concern because vampire bats are scary. And well, many people find vampire bats scary, I guess I should say. And they can have some real negative consequences for livestock. So vampire bats will prey on chickens and cattle and things like that. They usually don't kill the livestock that they're feeding on, especially the cattle. Those are way too big for a little vampire bat to negatively hurt them. But there is, some risk of rabies transmission to the animals, and sometimes they can cause deaths in chickens if a bunch of vampire bats feed off of the same chicken. So I wanted to share, actually, we had a whole episode on vampire bats.
That's right.
Yeah, it was episode 10. And I'm just going to actually share this all with you real quick. So hang on. So if you go to our website, let me share my screen again. Yeah, so if you go to our website, which I'm always trying to get people to go to because I don't update it regularly, but I do have a lot of updates on there. And you can go find episode 10, Vampire Bats. It was way, way back in the day. We had our wonderful guest, Jerry Carter, Dr. Jerry Carter, who has made a career and a life studying vampire bats. And I'm just going to play a quick little clip from that episode to refresh everyone's memory about vampire bats. And before I play it, I just want to share that what you're going to see in this video is a special thing that vampire bats do. Christian, do you remember? I'm curious, do you remember like the thing with the food in the vampire bats and food sharing specifically?
Gosh, now you put me on the spot. I don't remember.
I was doing too much talking, so I wanted to.
Yeah, I will come in, but gosh, I have to. I don't remember. No.
Okay, so here's the deal with food sharing in vampire bats. Basically, vampire bats can only eat blood. They are obligate blood eaters.
Oh yes, here we go.
Yeah, and so that means that they can actually starve to death really easily if they go, because blood is not very nutritious. So if a vampire bat goes for more than a few days without food, it will die if it doesn't manage to get a blood meal. Mm-hmm. And so this is very risky. And so to sort of mitigate that risk, vampire bats will actually do food sharing, in which they regurgitate blood into the other vampire bat's mouth.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just going to share a little clip of this video where it starts off by showing a vampire bat kind of going after a chicken. And Jerry, Dr. Carter, is talking in the background about this social bonds that these animals have formed, basically to allow them to survive. They need their social network to survive, to have other bats to share food with and things like that. And Christian, can you see the video now when it's full screen? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play it.
Say something. I mean, most people who are interested in cooperative relationships in humans would study humans, right? But there are also people who study cooperative relationships in non-human primates to try to understand the evolutionary origins of, for instance, friendships or the kinds of cooperation that people engage in. And one of the advantages of vampire bats over, say, primates is that because they're so small, they're sort of like a lab rat. So we can bring them into the lab, we can bring them into captivity, and their whole social life in the wild could be existing inside of a space about the size of a closet or a phone booth. They still have phone booths? I guess not, so I should say closet, a small closet. I mean, they could be spending all of their social time inside of a hollow tree. So that's a situation we can simulate in a laboratory, whereas it's very difficult to simulate the natural life of, say, baboons or monkeys or chimpanzees in captivity. You really have to study them in the wild if you want to understand the full extent of their social interactions. And so that's one of the advantages that we have with vampire bats, is we can have them in these controlled situations and also sort of manipulate their relationships, and we can really measure a behavior which is very costly to each individual. So this food sharing behavior is something they're really giving up their own food to give to another individual. And that's something that's actually quite rare in other animals.
Yeah, so Jerry said it really well there. So if you want to catch that, go back and watch episode 10. It's just amazing, the social bonds that these bats form. Did you remember that, Christian?
Oh yeah, now I do. I'm sorry, I'm still a bit on jet lag, so I'm still at 7 a.m. in Australia, so I'm not completely there yet. I haven't had coffee, so that's excuse my slow start, but I'll be fine. So it's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised. I didn't realize you were going to be in Vancouver. I thought you'd still be in Australia.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But anyway, I do remember that. And of course, coming back to this interesting article on Texas and the increase of vampire bats there, I mean, people associate all kinds of bad things with vampire bats, and especially rabies, right? And if you look at the statistics, actually, it's like that I think vampire bats are more bad-mouthed than the statistics actually justify, right?
Yeah, and I mean, someone commented, the bats are actually, the vampire bats are actually not very big, right? They're actually quite small. Actually, I have a specimen of one just a few feet away. I should have grabbed it. It's in the other room. Anyways, but they're quite, they're quite small for bats. And there is some other articles that I will share. Yeah, let me share the picture. So there's a lot of press on vampire bats, basically, because they are so charismatic. They're so cool. Oh yeah, this is the one I wanted to share. Hang on. It's a little bit of a learning curve here with the sharing. So this was an article from the BBC that is vampire bats French kiss with blood to form lasting bonds. So this food sharing is not only something, we've learned from research that this food sharing is not only something that they do because they have social bonds, but the food sharing helps reinforce and form the social bonds in the first place. With sometimes bats even competing, for example, to share food with each other. And, that's not what I want. And so these social bonds in vampire bats can manifest in other ways. So this is from another article, vampire bat adopts orphan baby bat after untimely death of its mother. So basically the mother vampire bats will adopt sometimes babies that are orphaned within their vampire bat community, within their social network. Vampire bats, all bats are mammals, and so they nurse their young. And so in this particular example, the mother vampire bat had started nursing the orphaned baby. Oops, that's my family at Christmas. Scroll too far in the pictures. That was my mom dancing. You all got a sneak peek there. Yeah, so pretty cool. I'm gonna scroll through the comments here. We have a video of Georgia and a video of Georgia, very Inception. Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, oh, I hope I look as good as I did before. My hair is like longer. It's like a rainy day here in Michigan. So, and a comment. I think we have a comment. Christian looks so different back then. Yeah, that was Jerry Carter. He's a vampire bat biologist, and I'll actually put his, let me put a link to his website in the chat here, and I can share it. So if you go to socialbat.com, that's where Jerry Carter's, he has all kinds of videos of vampire bats there. It's really cool.
But just coming back to the topic of rabies, because I remember as soon as as anyone mentions bats, whenever it was mentioned, ever since I was so intrigued by your studying bats to such an extent, I've been telling lots of people, and all they say is rabies, right? That's the first thing. But that seems to be also a common misconception. I mean, bats do transmit rabies. Yes, that's a fact. But the actual, there are two things. The actual occurrence is statistically is very low, and the second is you can now, of course, also vaccinate cattle against rabies, right? So it's actually, again, it seems to be a misconception. Right?
Cattle and people, as David Howden points out, in the UK, bat workers take rabies precaution.
Yes.
Yeah, so me too. So I have a pre-exposure rabies vaccination, but it is true that the vaccinations are not cheap.
I see. Okay.
I think at least for humans, they can be quite expensive. Maybe as the need increases, they will become cheaper and we'll start vaccinating cattle and stuff. There is also, people have developed an oral vaccine for the bats that they will go and spread in the bat communities, like on their fur or something, because vampire bats are social, they groom each other, they lick each other.
Yes.
And then the oral vaccine basically spreads from the fur of one bat to all the other bats that licked this bat.
By the way, David Howden's comment is right. You look more doctory now.
I know.
That's probably true. That's probably true.
I saw that comment. I just perfect. I loved it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's good.
Yeah. So, so it was, I don't know, it's pretty cool. I think the takeaway for vampire bats, because I do want to move on to the other animals too, but the takeaway for vampire bats is that, people are developing sort of sustainable, they're not that big of a negative impact in many senses. And so you don't need to be like disproportionately afraid of them. And that, people are kind of practicing developing these sustainable ways to protect livestock from vampire bats. There's, rabies vaccinations. Even if you get bit by a rabid animal and you get vaccinated before you start showing symptoms, like that's good. You don't need to be vaccinated beforehand. I mean, it's better to be vaccinated beforehand, obviously, but it's not the end of the world if you get bit by a rabid animal and you haven't been vaccinated. It's not a death sentence.
Right.
So,
yeah. So let's talk about other animal misconceptions. I mean, the biggest misconception I always hear is when people say as brutal as an animal. I always wonder about that because that comes up again and again. Now during the war action in Ukraine, I heard, I heard that quite often. They're just like animals, and I always wonder about that. What do you think, Georgia, when people say they're just like animals?
Well, I think nature can be brutal, and that includes us. I've seen, I think, humans can be quite brutal.
Oh yeah.
Because of our society. Like, individual animals, it's often more individual level, and you have a big incentive to not get hurt. But when you're part of this very hierarchical social structure with power and someone else tells you go hurt someone else, they don't have to deal with the negative consequences. Whoever's in power, they don't have to deal with that direct violence to themselves. They can tell other people to go be violent. I think that's a pretty dangerous thing. I think that humans have mastered that, I think, more so than other animals.
Yeah, and I also think, as far as I know, animals would seldom kill out of pleasure or so. There's usually a reason behind, right? Predators, if I look at eagles or so, there's a reason why they do that, right?
Yeah, well, house cats excluded, right? They like to kill birds.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I forgot. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
But that's sort of an exceptional, right? Because if they weren't being fed by people, they would be doing it more.
Yes.
They would be eating that food instead of just killing.
Anyway, so that's just the general term on animals, but then let's go right down. Let's start with the ostrich. That's one I love because I lived in South Africa, and as a child, I remember the first encounter I ever had with an ostrich when I arrived in South Africa. I think I was 12 years old. I was allowed to ride an ostrich, which is really crazy, isn't it? They have these ostrich races.
I thought that was like something in cartoons. Continue on. So 12-year-old Christian is riding an ostrich. Wait, back up. Was your parent involved? Were they was this at like a fair?
No, it was just we visited an ostrich farm, and I was already very tall. I was this long, very long, tall, and my legs were sort of just on the side of the ostrich. It was crazy. And then this thing just raced off like anything, and then they told me to use the head as a brake, so I had to pull the head back. And as soon as I did it, the ostrich stopped instantly, and I went, right across, and I landed on my feet because I was so tall. Anyway, that was my first encounter with the ostrich. And then later when I was in school, I used to, I didn't pay, attention often like I should. I remember I was talking to someone and then someone said to me, Christian, are you an ostrich? And that's what I mean. You think I don't see you, because you're hiding behind the book, or you put your head in the sand. And that was the common concept, the common idea that ostriches put their head in the sand and think because they don't get seen. I wouldn't be seen like either hiding behind the book and talking, right? But it actually turns out to be a completely wrong idea, because ostriches do not bury their heads in the sand. All they do is they bury eggs in the sand, and they would they actually rotate the eggs as often birds do, right? But when ostriches encounter predators, they either run, which they do very well, or they lie very flat on the ground. They do that. They flatten their heads and they bend down. But they don't. this idea of an ostrich burying its head in the sand is one of the big misconceptions.
So do you think the misconception comes because they have their head down, like they're turning the eggs in their nest or something they're looking at their eggs?
Yes, I think so. I think so. I'm just surprised it is so, it is so well known. And I believed it for many years, actually. Even when my teacher told me, he probably thought it was like that too.
Yeah. So because I've actually never heard that. I was born and raised in the United States, so I had heard the ostrich head in the sand, but I had not heard the thing about them not being able to see very well or something. That's kind of like an associated, one step further misconception, I guess.
Yeah, well, you have to be also very careful when you stand an ostrich. As far as I remember, an ostrich kicks forward, not backwards, like a horse. A horse, be careful, never stand behind it. And the ostrich can kick forward and quite severe, actually. So you have to watch out. And ostriches are very good watchdogs. They use them actually for that purpose.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's got to be careful. Such powerful legs. Exactly, Amanda. That's exactly right. Yes. Guess the whole myth got started when a mother ostrich was hiding their eggs from predators. Yes, I would believe that is correct. That's probably blind as an ostrich. No, wait. We come to another topic. There's not blind as an ostrich, but let's jump to the next one. That's a good one.
David, are you pulling our legs, or is that something you've actually heard?
1 second.
Well, yeah, I guess Kristen, you were talking about how they couldn't see very.
Yeah. Well, let's get right to the topic here of what David is talking about. Well, it is, of course,
blind as a bat.
It's blind as a bat. Well, Georgia, I'm going to hand this right over to you.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so bats are, for the most part, not blind. I guess there's your answer, everybody. They do use echolocation. Many species, I should say, use echolocation, and that helps them hunt insects at night, especially the species that eat insects that are flying around at night and they're trying to catch them. They need that echolocation, and their sight alone would not be good enough. But they actually have decent sight. Many species, their eyesight is about the same as humans. Some species, their eyesight is better in some ways than humans, especially better at night. So a lot of the species that eat fruit, these are bats like flying foxes that you find more in Australia or in some areas of Southeast Asia, for example, like Puerto Rico, like basically tropical areas where there's fruit or fruity things year round outside. That's where your fruit eating bats are. And they have good eyesight, very good.
And to David Howden's question, are there any blind bat species? Do you think there are? I don't know. There are none. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so that's completely wrong. So, well, that's thank you for clearing that up. So let me jump to the next one. The next, let me see where I have it here. Yeah, this is a very interesting one. And again, I thought this was true for many years. So here the thing is, charm a snake with music. Snakes, well, how does that actually work? Do snakes have ears? Does anybody know whether a snake have ears? It's quite interesting. Well, it turns out they don't actually, but they can feel vibrations, right? So again, what they're doing there in this case is the snake is quasi-hypnotized by the charmer. That's what you see in the picture, who waves around the instrument to entice the snake to flare up. So the snake is actually provoked by the charmer in this case.
Is it by? Do you know if it's by the movements?
Exactly.
Or the vibrations.
Yes, Georgia. It's only the movement. It's quite provocative, right? I've actually seen this in Egypt. I've seen people do this. I remember that. And I was so intrigued that my mother on the market bought me a small snake, that would pop out too, and I played with it all the time as a child. I remember that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I want to find a video of this actually.
Yes.
I'm going to do it right now. We're going to take this one has like a ton of views. Hopefully there's no mistreatment of snakes in this video. Okay.
And whilst you do that and talk about snakes, just one other thing, because we did talk about snakes when I was in Australia, and Blake did encounter, you probably remember him in the last 2 series. And it actually turns out that, people are very worried about snakes, but it turns out, I think that only about 7% of all the snakes are actually poisonous. So that's another sort of misconception, that one believes that snakes are all very dangerous. Well, most snakes are actually not dangerous. Yeah, there's a picture.
Yeah, definitely true.
There you go.
Oof, this poor snake, it doesn't want to come out. It wants to stay in its box. It's trying to run away. Aw, I hate this video.
Yeah, this is exactly what really happens. This is what really happens. They feel provoked, right?
Yeah, like finally the snake is like, okay, I have no other option but to
Yeah,
face
that's
you.
what it is. It's pure provocation, right? It is.
All right.
No, thanks for showing that, Georgia. That really shows the way it is. I mean, we are used to the cartoons, right? But it's not like that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes me sad to see that, because I do worry. Like, does that snake just like live in that box for the most part?
That's cruel. It's very cruel. Yes.
Yeah.
It is. Who wouldn't be annoyed at the sniff fruit guy? You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm downright sort of. Yeah, I'm definitely annoyed at him. He takes you out of your bed, blasts annoying music at you. I mean, I actually kind of like the music. It was just when you're like brought out of your bed or whatever, out of your little hidey place.
Is that how you wake up, Georgia?
Not first thing in the morning, yeah. Amanda asks, I wonder if these snakes that they use have their venom sacs removed to keep from being bitten.
Yes, I would assume so with that, and that's also in a way cruel, right? Because I mean, it's like taking the essence away from a snake, right? So yeah.
Yeah, they can't live in the wild again, or if they ever lived in the wild, yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, because you heard that from Blake. He was saying that actually, even venomous snakes are very careful with their venom. They don't just attack and bite because it's the tool that they have, right?
Yeah.
For hunting. So yeah. Okay, the next one is an interesting one. Let me just bring this up if I can.
I have no idea what's coming next. I'm so excited.
Coming next? Yeah, I think I couldn't, because of our technical problems, I wasn't able to do everything. But let me just talk about this one. Hang on, Georgia, 1 second. So the next one that's coming up is actually, and I was surprised about this one. It is giraffes only sleep 30 minutes a day. Can you believe it? That's incredible.
Wait, that's the misconception or that's the truth?
It's a misconception.
Okay, good. I was like,
there seems to be this idea that giraffes hardly sleep. Well,
I was about to be really jealous of giraffes. Okay, continue. Go ahead. What's the truth?
But this comes more close to Napoleon, I guess, because he needed very little sleep. In fact, I think 4 to 4.5 hours of sleep, which must have been terrible for his troops. But it says, in fact, after intensive research, scientists found out that giraffes sleep on and off throughout the night and typically take an afternoon nap, totaling as little over 4.5 hours a day, right? So that's what it is. That's about Napoleon. I think he needed about 4.5 hours a day, which was very annoying for the soldiers. I
didn't know that. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that there's some genetics or thing about some people where they only need like 5 hours of sleep or something like that a night. I'm like, oof, imagine. Yeah. Oh yeah. Gentleman Ghost said Edison too. Minimal sleep. I didn't know that.
And the next one is very interesting. It's about bears. I mean, which we of course have quite a few. Oh, there's a South African. Hi, Sean. Very nice to see you. This is about bears and hibernation. Now, I could have sworn that bears hibernate, and I think that's what we all believe. But they're. Do you know that actually, Georgia? But they're.
I know they don't. Yeah. Well, some still debate that they do, but go ahead and tell us.
Yeah. No, this is very interesting. I was completely surprised when I learned this, and this was something I did not know. There are two different types of hibernation. I know that from hummingbirds, they have a torp right at night, so they just reduce their heart rate. But true hibernation is actually where you almost completely, all the body functions completely go down almost to zero, and that's not the case with bears. In fact, they're more similar to hummingbirds there, because their body temperature goes down, but you can easily wake them up, and you've got to be very careful of that. So
their body temperature does not go down very much. It drops by a few degrees Celsius, and a lot of bats, for example, they drop their body temperature by, like 20 degrees Celsius or something, or easily 15, much more than just a few.
So would you say that's torp in this case? Would you say that bats are more
there is a little bit of arbitrariness in these definitions, but usually hibernation is considered as an extreme form of torpor. It's a spectrum. Right. Actually, I have a paper, Christian, that was accepted just last week or the week before about it's an opinion perspective piece proposing a framework for how scientists should be thinking about like hibernation and torpor and migration, and basically looking at the strategies animals use to survive cold environments, to survive winters, like freezing winters. We could talk about it maybe if people are interested, but I don't know. We'll wait and see. You have a comment? Yeah, that torpor is neat. It's kind of cool. It's nice how it's often very flexible behavior. Like if you're low on food, you're too cold, just drop your body temperature. You don't need as much energy now. Oh, David Dunn counters that he's seen Yogi Bear, the cartoon, hibernate. Yogi Bear had very high food needs. Maybe that's why he had to use extra hibernation.
Oh, and giraffes. There's interesting gentleman goes, I'm not entirely sure if giraffes sleep standing. I have seen giraffes in Africa, in South Africa, in the Kruger Park lying down. I'm not exactly sure, actually. I'm not exactly sure.
I think I've seen pictures of them sitting down, like kind of, you know what I mean? But I don't know if they if they necessarily sleep like that or not. We could somebody Google it. I think
I love such comments. Really, they're good.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Let's bring the next one.
It would be irresponsible of me not to present the counter argument to bears hibernating, which is some counter that they do actually hibernate, and that we should define hibernation not just as how far does your body temperature drop or how easily can you wake up, but like there are other metabolic functions that they suppress to a great degree in winter. For example, I think one example is that they hardly produce like any urine. So they've shut down a lot of their digestive processes, even though their body temperature isn't as shut down. So that's the counter argument why some people would say bears really do hibernate, but I think I guess wrong is too strong of a word because we're just using definitions of hibernation, but I don't like that approach.
Well, maybe just to Amanda's point here, I'm just reading the comments. You would like to talk about the paper that you recently submitted. It would be interesting. So,
yes, I can do that. We will share it for sure. I'm sure people will have all kinds of interesting. Actually, he doesn't know this yet, but David Howden, if you're still watching, you're acknowledged in this paper, in the acknowledgement section of the paper, because helping me think about, because I tried to talk about how this would apply to lots of different animal groups. And so I reached out to David Howden because he's an entomologist. I don't know that much about insects. And so that was very helpful. So
that's wonderful. That's great. How good to hear. Well, that's another great comment, Georgia. See what kind of feedback we have here. That must have started at HAPS, right, originally, isn't it?
Yeah, that was back when we were in HAPS days. So, I mean, this is just a testament to how important all of you viewers are to.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a one-way, like, here's what we learned. Like,
no.
I mean, and a lot of, like, David Howden, he, he is still here.
He's still there.
He also does his own live stream broadcasts and of lots of, like, little neat entomological or just natural history things that he finds. Out walking and stuff like that. So it's always fun to catch. Right, here we have a giraffe answer from Gentleman Ghost. According to Google, the expert source, giraffes can sleep standing up as well as lying down. Aha! And their sleep cycles are quite short, as Christian said, lasting 35 minutes or shorter. So elephants are another animal that sleep very little. Yeah, so the giraffes don't sleep for very much at one time, but collectively over the day, they still sleep like several hours, as you said, Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, birds can do the same during migration, which I find fascinating because they can migrate for, they basically can shut off part of their brain, when they fly. I mean, that fascinates me no end.
Is that the thing where they like half of their brain is sleeping and the other half is awake? Or that's also dolphins too, right?
Yes. Maybe that's another topic. That's a great topic for next time. Which birds can actually sleep during activity? I think that's which animals can sleep during activity. That's what I meant. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I am hoping that these are real facts we're sharing and not just more advanced misconceptions. I'm pretty sure that it's a real thing, though.
No, I think I heard this from some bird expert. I'm not inventing this. I don't think so. I hope so. Okay. Well, let's bring the next. Can you share the next picture? That's quite an interesting one.
Oh, yes, definitely. Real quick, this comment from Rebecca Wilkinson. The only thing to be watchful for when attempting hibernation is if your body temperature drops too much, you can freeze to death.
Yeah.
You can't wake up then. Yeah, that is absolutely right. There's like a risk, definitely a risk. And so, okay, this next picture.
Yeah, this is a very interesting one about goldfish. Goldfish have a 3-second memory span. Contrary to popular belief, behavioral studies show that goldfish can associate sounds with feeding times, operate tiny levers, and even recognize their owner's presence. Definitely, yes. I don't have a fish tank myself, but my son has, and I was talking to him this morning, and he said they can recognize him miles away when he comes into, well, not miles away, but when he comes into the room, and they know everything about time, and this is unfair. So maybe some of you who have fish tanks can second this what this is, but I have no idea where this comes from. It's really unfair.
So I think that the fish, I mean, maybe they just learned that humans represent food. But I had a pet newt, a salamander, when I was a kid who he would come to the front of the tank when I entered the room. He would be like, oh. He would definitely associate me with getting food, but that's more of a learned pattern maybe than memory. So I'm not sure. But I mean, when we had a few episodes ago, the cognition episode and self-recognition, we learned that many people claim that fish can recognize themselves, that they have
That's
a
specific species of names of
They were a type of reef fish, I remember. Yeah.
I get it. The also stage of so yeah, we'll be getting to go nature and see all these misconceptions from. The other one is this one. We have a few. My picture. Also, yeah, this is interesting. Get here. Just picture. Okay. So what is this about? Yeah, the bull. This is a famous one. This is a very famous one.
Whoa.
That bulls get provoked by, by the color red. So it turns out, I mean, as you probably know, that bulls are actually, they've done colorblind. They're more provoked by the movement and probably the contrast of the cloth, but not by the color. Right? So, yeah.
And real quick, yeah, we had a few comments that your sound went out, Christian. It was choppy for a little bit. I could understand what you were saying. The bulls we understood fine. I think it was more before that.
Yes, sorry about this. I hope by next time Georgia and I have this fixed again. It was just very, very much improvised because we couldn't get it working. So
it just sounded like a bad internet connection for a second. So,
okay.
But that's good. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was just me or what. So this bull, the thing with the matador is the movement, not the color. Basically, that's the takeaway. Yes.
By the way, something I never did in Spain. I know many people love bullfights, but it's something I just refuse to watch. Okay, so I'm not a bullfight fan. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I'm a pretty sensitive heart about that. Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I hope I won't chop away again. Oh, this is another one that's quite interesting. It's about camels, and again, I've also ridden on a camel. Everything. I've done that one too.
I'm getting jealous. I want to ride on a camel.
Again,
says that sharks also have an interesting way of resting. I bet maybe it's like the dolphin where they sleep with half of their brain. Let us know. Yes, Christian says. Have you ridden a shark?
Yeah. Wait. Camels store water in their humps. No, they don't. Well, I had my one aunt was Egyptian, so she was in Cairo, and it was very interesting. So we came to visit her, and yeah, that was my first ride on a camel, where I was just a very small boy, and I was crying my head off because it was. I mean, this thing that just when it raises, it just goes up and up, and you think you're going up and up, and I was so terrified. But I remember, people saying, well, camels can of course cross the desert for quite a few days without any or very little water, and people said, well, they store water in their humps. Well, no, they don't. That's fat what they store there. So it's another misconception, right? So.
Yeah, I've heard that. When you rode the camel, was it just you, or can you ride it with two people? Or
no, there were the three of us, my two sisters and I. We were all crying on the camel. We were all small.
Same camel?
Yeah, but we were small. I mean, just it wasn't. No, usually you should only ride one per person. No, you shouldn't. I mean, it is quite a load for them, right? It is. So yeah.
We have a comment. I fed the fish when my boss was out. 350-gallon tank. Wow, huge. It was a 2-part feeding, flakes, then pellets. I forgot which came first, but the fish knew because they all swam to the top. They knew me and him. They were like, flakes first. I assume the pellets sank. Yeah. You're like, oh, okay, flakes.
By the way, the biggest animal I ever rode was an elephant. That was incredible. Wow.
You've ridden an elephant too. We're going to have a whole episode just on the animals that you've ridden.
I'm just remembering all this in all the countries. That was terrifying. My God. I mean, geez, it's incredible. Yeah. I thought I couldn't believe that as far as a biologist is concerned, I would beat you in something, but maybe this is the only part I beat you in. As far as biology is concerned. That's funny. Yeah. And then finally, there's one more misconception. No, there are two more. About sharks can smell blood from miles away. Now, this is interesting. Maybe David Dunn can also comment on this, but this has something, there are several points to that. Of course, sharks have very good sense of smell. We know that. But if you go by pure diffusion, let's say you cut your finger, right, in the ocean, you cut your finger. And
bad move. Don't do it.
there's no way. I mean, your molecules can diffuse so quickly. You can actually do the calculation, right? It would take quite a long time. But then they've then done more detailed tests. Of course, if you have turbulence and so on, that can diffuse much faster, or ocean currents. That's what you would need. But even then, they did experiments with a shark, and they found out it's about the size of an Olympic swimming pool. That's the range of smell. So it's not miles away.
Okay.
That's
all right, safe.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So the chances are there's probably not, most areas, there's probably not a shark within an Olympic swimming pool of you. And so that is, you're in the clear.
Yes.
I did cut my hand once in the ocean as a kid. I didn't even think of the shark myth, even though I believed it. I reached down because I was just like, I couldn't see, but I could feel in the water. And I was pretty far out on a sandbar, like really far out. And I was just like reaching down for shells. And then I think I grabbed a crab and it cut me. It was like, and it stung so much because of the salt water. And I just brought my hand up and I had this just like big cut across the palm. And I was like, oops.
Yeah. Well, but then, anyway, that's quite interesting. So it's not miles. They must have an excellent sense of smell, but not that good. And finally, that's a funny one. Penguins fall backwards when they look up at airplanes. I didn't know
what?
That. Yes, what?
Is that true? Is that a comment? Where are you seeing this?
No. So this I read in National Geographic. Legend has it that British pilots buzzing around islands of South America saw penguins toppling over like dominoes when they looked up skywards. Why this is not true? An experiment testing a story found that penguins are perfectly capable of maintaining their footing, even if they're watching airplanes. Low-flying airplanes can cause penguins to panic and leave their nests. Well, I would believe that, yes. So that's just a funny one.
Yeah, I mean, I would panic if there was low-flying aircraft.
Yeah, so I'm sure there are many more other misconceptions, but this was the funniest one I found. Yeah. So
this is going back to the shark thing. Sean has a thing that surfers do this. They pee in their wetsuits. I think he's saying to warm up their wetsuit. And I did not know that. I think that's disgusting. I knew that you could. I thought it was just like in an emergency, like if you have to pee. But anyways. I have been like on a surfboard like around Santa Cruz off California where there's just like tons of people in the water, and now I'm like anyways. But so like people in the chat were also talking about like the sharks being attracted to not just blood but urine. And so Sean is saying there's a teenager who got attacked twice by great whites here in Cape Town. The great whites are huge. So yeah, I guess like that surfer, he or she was peeing in her wetsuit a lot. Potent pee. Don't do it, people.
Yeah, and by the way, talking about Cape Town, I remember, I went swimming in the ocean there, and also Durban. The currents are crazy there because of the Pacific and Atlantic and so on. It really goes crazy there. So you have to be extremely careful. I was quite a good swimmer, actually. I swam quite a lot, and also in school teams and so on. And I remember myself struggling in that water, and I heard that good swimmers drowned there. You have to be extremely careful, right? So, just to that point.
Yeah, the currents can be very scary.
Oh my goodness!
Did you ride a penguin? Have you ridden a penguin?
No, I haven't done that, but I've been with penguins too.
Inhumane.
On Boulder Beach near Cape Town. It was wonderful. It was when the beach was still open. I've experienced just lying among penguins. It was wonderful, absolutely amazing. Now they don't do that anymore. So Sean may have done the same, but yes, I've done that too.
Oh yeah, what about thieving magpies? They don't care about the shinies, but instead keeping their minds engaged with new stuff. Learned this from a rescue magpie. Yeah, that was another thing we were talking about actually. Initially, Amanda was messaging me about not just the vampire bats moving up, which we started at the beginning of the show with, but also about the bad conceptions around like ravens and crows being associated with death because they're like black. Magpies, not so much, but they're all intelligent birds. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Sean's remarking Durban was flooded yesterday. They had incredible floods. My sister lives in Durban, by the way, Sean. So she sent me photos that it was crazy. I mean, the flooding there has been insane. There were bridges, everything. Well, you know that obviously, but she sent me some pictures, so I saw that. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
what was the cause of the flooding? Was it like
It was just intense
weather?
rain. They had 300 something like she wrote to me 300 to 400 millimeters of rain in 20. It's crazy in 24 hours or so. It's just crazy. It was like tropical rain coming down. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if these particular rains are associated with climate change or not, but I will say we've had like a number of like anti-climate change comments in the chat, which I've not been sharing because I just have this to say to people that don't believe in climate change, which is suck it. Like, I mean, I'm not going to like have a whole spiel now, but yeah, I mean, that's just not in line with the science. So
no, and I mean, we'll see what happens this summer. I'm actually really watching the climate now because as you probably know, last year we had this incredible heat wave in Canada that was second to none. It was absolute record, and we had these crazy wildfires, and then we had the floods coming. So I'm really watching what's going to happen in the Okanagan. At our summer house, we were evacuated twice, and so many ospreys died from the heat. It was hotter and warmer than their body temperature. So I hope we won't have another year like that. So we'll see. So. Yeah.
We have a comment here coming off of the ravens and crows. This is a good point. It highlights how I'm not a bird person. David Howden says ravens, crows associated with death more around them feeding on the dead on battlefields rather than the color, as I understand it. I could see that being the case. Yeah, you've talked a lot about how eagles will scavenge, right? So these other birds will as well.
Yes.
And that's also why vultures have a bad rap, because people associate them with eating dead things. But in both cases, they're not killing them; they're just scavenging them.
Yeah, by the way, I had some time ago, and that's before we started the Humans and Wildlife show, talking about vultures. I had an expert from Turkey talking about vultures. It was most interesting. Maybe I can get him back on because I'm sure you would find this fascinating. So many things, why vultures are so important for us, and how they also have, unfortunately, in some cases, nearly become extinct. It's very sad. So, yeah.
Yeah, there are several species of vultures that are endangered. It's hard for them to survive.
It is.
They have
it is
specialized requirements, just like any other animal. Some of the vulture species do.
Yes. Right. So, any more misconceptions? I think. Well, I'm sure there are a lot more, but none that I can think of at the moment. So.
Yeah, I don't have other big misconceptions. I guess one of them, we can close with another bat misconception, which there is a bat thing that people sometimes say that bats will get tangled up in your hair because they're trying to make a nest. This is
yes, I remember you talking about that. That I do remember. Yes.
Yeah, have other people heard this? Because it is. I hear it sometimes, but not very often. But my friend, I was at a conference last week, and it was a bat conference. I was with a bunch of other bat biologists, and we were talking about this myth. And my friend, she was like, you know what? She was like, I studied baby bats. Like for her research, she basically at one time was like going and temporarily kidnapping the baby bats and then putting them back. She was looking at the patterns of veins in their wing and like the pattern that the veins branch in, basically seeing if that stays consistent over time. Like, is that like the bat's thumbprint that you could use to identify it over time, the same individual? But anyway, she was like, I was doing the worst thing you could do in terms of a mother bat's perspective, like going and kidnapping their baby right out from under their nose. And she was like, and they would be, like flying out in a way, but she's like, I never got a bat in my hair. She's like, that's what I always tell people. So, yeah.
So many comments coming in, just incredible.
Frankman summed it up really nicely. General misconception: animals having agendas involving you, the human. Yeah. It's not about you. I hate to tell you, the animal
It's not
is
about
usually
you,
doing its
no.
own thing. Yeah. Yeah, migration. Yeah, we have so many comments coming in. So many. These are giving me good ideas for future topics. And especially that paper I talked about a little bit. I have some ideas on, like, I present some ideas on how we should be thinking about studying migration, effects of climate change on migration in that. So I'm excited to talk about that in a future episode. Yeah, scavengers help clean up good dead animals. That's an excellent point, Nancy, that we didn't make explicitly, but it's definitely very true. Yeah, you're either going to have animals eating the dead animals, or you're going to have a lot of rotting flesh. Yeah. The bat hair thing is one people say here, but it seems to have become a less common myth. I agree, David. I hear it less and less, and sometimes, but not always, it's more often associated with like older generations. Yeah. So, well, I guess we'll wrap up. But thank you, everyone, for joining us again. I'm not sure yet what our topic will be next week.
We'll come up with something as usual. We will always come up with something. There's so much to talk about, right?
It will be something very exciting. Yeah, maybe more about climate change. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. Bye.